Students who had relationship with a teacher, how did it start and how did it turn out? My PE teacher was a nice man, a Welsh rugby player. He taught me football in 7th grade, age 11. He taught me a sport every year until I was 16. We got along well, laughing and joking most of the time. I stayed in 6th grade, but I didn't take physical education lessons. I didn't have much to do with him. In my final year of 6th form, Y13, I went to the pub with a friend at lunchtime, Friday, always a Friday. It was 2003/2004. He was there with a geography teacher who played billiards. So we played with them too. I went back to school with a few beers, and we met after school for a few more beers. We did this a few times during my last year of 6th grade. This showed that he was really unhappy when he divorced his wife. The summer I left school. July/August, when I started college in September. I had been drinking with friends, not from school, during the day. When we decided to meet friends in town, I went to Weatherspoons, and who was there but my old gym teacher? The decree nisi was approved, and he drowned his sorrows with little complaint. I introduced him by name. God knows why. He did the same and didn't say I was a former student. I drink too much. I found myself at his house, where we ended up banging. I did this several times over the summer. He was 36. I was 18. He was disgusted with himself. I really didn't give a shit. Most summers when I returned from college, the same thing happened. Until I met my now husband at age 21. My boyfriend, now husband, and I moved back to my hometown when I was 28. Husband joined a local sports club because he had no friends in the area. He said he met an older man there who taught me. My husband is a gym teacher. They got along very well. It's so nice that my husband's new partner, my old gym teacher and F-buddy, came to our wedding. So most Saturdays me, my husband, him, his new wife, and our kids meet for drinks and watch football after the games. Basically, it turned out okay. Story 2. I'm not sure if this matters, but in my particular field, there is a mandatory internship period after graduating from university and passing the National Civil Service exam. During your internship, you will have a mentor who will guide you and teach you things that are not in the books, such as physics techniques and state laws. Schools teach the national curriculum, not state-specific laws. Mentors are often supervisors or directors at the institution where you completed your internship, but they can be anyone with certifications in the field. Internships are highly competitive and extremely difficult to find in my area. So I started with a simple job at a company and eventually got an internship. My mentor was the supervisor of his company and was over 10 years older than me. You won't be able to perform any tasks without supervision during your internship, so it's only natural that you'll spend a lot of time together during your internship. So we had the same schedule, worked on the same projects, and ate lunch together every day. About 4 months later, we both came back from vacation, and while catching up, I said I had big news. His news was that he had filed for divorce from his wife. He had wanted a divorce for a long time, and discussing the affair with me finally triggered it. His ex-wife had cheated on him twice, and there was evidence. My news is that I broke up with my boyfriend who I've always had. I went on vacation with my sister, and she thought I was unhappy because my boyfriend didn't respect me. He ended up talking to me like a little sister. What did you really get? How to get out of this relationship? We both looked at each other, blushed, and went back to dinner in awkward silence. Awkward conflicts at work, physical labor, embarrassing radio songs playing at work, Sting, and the Police's "Don't Stand So Close to Me" caught up in you, which took another 4 months. Just to name a few. The Young Girl Special by Gary Puckett and Union Gap, all of these songs spontaneously played on the radio while we were working together many times, and a veiled flirtation before we finally go on a date together. He continued to be my mentor for the remaining 4 months of my internship, and we met in secret. He was my direct supervisor and was responsible for the remaining 4 months of my internship. We met together when I got my license. We both went into public relations, and shortly after I joined another company, he was quickly promoted to manager, and I was promoted to manager within a year. 5 years later, we are still doing well in our new business, married, owning a home together, and expecting our first child in a month. So I have a happy ending. Story 3. He was a professor at the university I attended, and he was exactly twice my age. That was a fantasy I had all my life until our relationship ruined it for me. One night we went to the same concert, and a few days later he invited me out for coffee to talk about music. When we entered the cafe, he kissed me on the cheek in a European style and said something like, "Maybe this is too much for a first date." That was true, but it was exactly what I wanted to hear. That was a little less than 10 years ago, and I wish I could go back in time and punch myself in the face for being so stupid. A few days later, I gave him a BJ in his office, and a few days later, he took me to his apartment, and we had sex. Everything was new to me. I was so fascinated by the excitement of a forbidden relationship and by an older man who seemed crazy about me. We met in a deserted hall on campus and his office in broad daylight. We quietly kissed and made love to each other. We lived together secretly for several months, but then my parents found out and everything fell apart. If I hadn't lied to the administration on his behalf, he would have lost his job. We were together for about 6 months, and I finally woke up and realized that nothing had changed. My relationship with my parents has been ruined by someone who doesn't care about me at all, so I'm done with it. It was a terrible relationship. He was manipulative and lied about everything. Anything I wanted to do, any desire that was outside of his scope, was ridiculed or canceled. At one point, he bought me a cheap engagement ring. Would you believe I agreed to this? Infuriated him. He verbally attacked me to stop asking questions. He showed racy photos of me to people I didn't know and bragged about me to non-university friends in the most disgusting ways. He started constantly remembering how other women were in bed. He wanted fans who desperately needed his attention, and that was something he realized in me a long time ago. My long-held suspicions about his infidelity were confirmed after the fact. In the end, I was one of his 6 people, including 4 other students and the student next to him. We were all the same age, in his early 20s. It seems obvious now, but at the time I truly believed that I was special to him. Over the summer, I still had a year left in college. He was worried about whether he would be fired, not given the opportunity to work full-time, resign from the university, quit, or something like that. I was asked to do something. Where we met. Last I heard, he had taken a teaching position at a smaller university in the same area. I don't know what he's doing now, but his first 2 to 3 years after we separated, I received a limited number of phone calls, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, messages, etc. from time to time. I think he tried to apologize once, but I blocked the new account and left without reading any of the messages. Story 4. My religious studies college professor. She was hilarious and brilliant and always brought her interests up in class, and they usually aligned with mine. It started off with what felt like on-topic to class discussions, then into more friendly, casual conversations about books and movies, then it definitely transitioned into flirting. Which was weird because I'm also female and had never had feelings for another girl, so I thought it could just be some weird fantasy in my head, and I was just making something out of nothing. Anyways, fast forward, semester ends, I'm out of her class. I submit my final at noon. By 1 p.m., she emails me my final grade and says, "I'm all done submitting your grades, so you're officially no longer my student. Congrats on passing the class and good luck." So I sent back an email with a song attached, and then the emailing went on from there before we officially hung out, which led to sex, which led to a 3-year relationship. We moved in together for about a year, but it ultimately didn't work out cause we wanted different things long-term, but we ended on good terms, and I'm grateful for the relationship now 5 years out as it helped me realize what I want in a partner. I now have an amazing boyfriend, and I heard she recently got married to a woman she started dating after me. Story 5. I was a senior in high school, and my English class had a very beautiful Latin female college student teacher's assistant along with a very cool full-time male teacher. I was a really quiet kid my senior year, just wanting to graduate and get the hell out of school. I also liked to draw and write a lot, so I was always turning in work that interested her. She would ask me how I came up with ideas and discussed indie graphic novels with me, usually just small talk, and one of the only people that was really outgoing towards me. She asked a few weeks before Halloween if I could stay after one day to discuss a subject more with me, and as it was the last class of the day, I was okay with it. So we are sitting together discussing some of the material I wrote along with some books they made her think of that she wanted me to borrow to read. Everyone slowly has been leaving the class along with the full-time teacher. Eventually it is just me and her, and I don't notice this until she gets noticeably closer to me while talking. Basically her chest and my arm, which I noticed were bigger than her cloths made them appear. Then she starts asking me personal questions and saying personal experiences help with writing, which is mixed with her making herself look cute and giving me a look that I understand now is one of wanting. She asks if I've had a GF, and I tell her about why I'm so quiet at school, having a bad relationship, and not really being comfortable at school where everyone knows my business, and that is definitely why I'm single. At that point, she starts holding my hand and telling me that as a whole life can be hard, but it isn't all bad. And if it's any consolation, I did not deserve to get treated that way. Then she kissed me, and we kept kissing until we heard a janitor coming and asked me to come to her place. We got to her place where we immediately started making out in her bed and ended up having sex, which was amazing. Because of her, I've always been more attracted to women with curves that were also fit and obviously worked out. Ended up having sex a lot for the rest of the year and through my first year at community college where I was finishing my gen ed credits before transferring to a better university. Not a relationship, just really good friends that had sex a lot. She ended up moving to a different state for a really good teaching position at a college with an amazing writing program. We're both separately married now and want to meet as friends but are hesitant because we do not trust ourselves alone with each other. She's still very beautiful. Story 6. It started innocently enough. She was my chorus teacher, fresh out of college and only 6 years older than me. My brother was actually dating her friend from high school. I used to cut class and say I had a music lesson and we'd just hang in the music room, talk about books, music, movies. Then she started complaining about her relationship a lot, needing hugs, which I was more than happy to help with. It eventually turned to making out, and we finally started hooking up when she gave me rides home after school. I honestly felt like Elle found $1 million but couldn't tell anybody about it. It was weird. Then she got weird, asking for her hugs in front of the entire class. I knew everyone knew. I started riding home with my friends again, then she started just showing up at my house. Had a very awkward convo with my dad who knew exactly what was going on but was so impressed he just kept saying, "Damn, she's pretty." Ghosting hadn't been invented back then, but Elle did the best I could. Eventually she chilled out. A few months later, I stopped by her room during our normal hang ses time, and she apologized, told me she was just going through a lot with her shitty boyfriend and needed some attention from someone that actually liked her. We didn't talk much after that. Graduated soon after, but we're friends on Facebook and she actually married a decent guy and has a nice family. I'm very relieved we were never found out. It would have been devastating to both of us. Story 7. Had a crush on one of my grad school teachers for a year and a half. I was into everything about her. Looks, brain, everything. I ended up teaching the same subject many years later, and I still use the notes and materials from her classes with my own students. She was engaged to someone else, so I never even thought about anything ever happening. It was a nice fantasy. Then out of the blue, she calls my cell phone and tells me that she's thinking of getting into yoga and knows that I am into yoga, so would I get a drink with her and tell her more? I was not exactly experienced with hookups, and I actually took her at her word. I went expecting to talk about yoga and go home afterwards. We ended up getting totally wasted, making out in the middle of a bar, and then I walked her home where I kept saying, "I'm sorry, and this definitely isn't happening, and I'll just get you to your door and go home." It did happen, but the joke was on her. She got a few seconds of the worst sex of her life, and then got to listen to me in the bathroom for a while. The next day, she found me in the hallway and told me that it was a huge mistake and asked me not to tell anyone. Nobody would believe me anyway, so I agreed. I can honestly say I wish the entire thing had never happened. She got married and moved on with her life. I ended up having to take her husband's class before I could graduate. Story 8. When I was 19, I dated a professor at my university for a few months. I wasn't his student, but he taught some of my friends. We met randomly at a club, and I had no idea he was a professor at my uni until a few days later when we started texting. He was really hot. He had dark hair and bright blue eyes and told me that his female students would flirt with him in office hours. He was 33, so very young for a prof, but pretty old for me at the time. It was fun for a bit. He was not happy when we realized he taught some of my friends. The day we realized he taught my friends was when I was at his apartment a couple weeks after meeting, and I asked to see some of his class materials. He thought it would be interesting if I could tell the difference between a BS essay and a great essay, even if I wasn't familiar with the subject. So I started reading and realized the BS essay with the failing grade had my friend's name at the top. He was very upset because apparently it's some sort of privacy violation that I was looking at her failed assignment. But I thought it was sexy that he thought my friend's essay sucked. Really played up his position of power in my mind.